One of the greatest difficulties in being a serious thinker is that if you begin to see the world in radically different terms from the norm, it's extremely difficult to explain your perspective. I want to focus on one example of this. The concept of time is deeply embedded in so many aspects of human thought. It's not just a key concept within physics, but in the popular imagination. Things such as time travel are kind of accepted without reflection. Although we know that none of us can time travel ourselves, there is this, I think, general sense from the many entertainments, the many movies and science fiction series, all that kind of thing, where time travel is a key component. There are a lot of films that use the time travel technique in order to tell a narrative, even if it's not a story about time travel. So you have this narrative structure where, for example, the film will open with a scene that happens after the rest of the film. And so this kind of like resequencing of time is something that everyone is very comfortable with as an idea, and we sort of just take it for granted that time is a real thing. Real things have to be ontologically based, which is to say they are actual. They're within what is actually present in the cosmos, in the universe. We typically think of time as consisting of past, present, and future. The only one of those things which is ontologically based is present. Everything in the past was ontologically based at the time it occurred, but it's no longer ontologically based once we refer to it. It's just something which occurred previously in a different present from the one now. This is not a radical thought at all. Everyone within, various spiritual traditions is fully aware of this idea that the only actual point in time is now. The same is true, of course, for the future. The future consists of things unknown. It is imaginings, possibilities. But the future is only real when you get there. There is no ontological basis for the future or the past. They are artifacts of mind. Now you could say, okay, well, there is an actual abstraction in the mind, but that's a different domain from, for example, physical reality. When you're talking about a time machine, you're talking about someone actually traveling physically from one point in time to another. That's not what's going on. There is no physical time. Time is a mental abstraction that we use in order to describe change within the physical domain. It's so obvious. And yet, it's becoming fashionable to talk about things like retrocausality, which is this idea that something in the future will change what happened in the past, which, to my way of thinking, is just the biggest garbage. It's such a, that was a very badly said phrase there. It's just the biggest load of garbage. Can I say that? And the justification for this is, of course, the double slit experiment. An experiment which makes the claim that a quote-unquote observer changes the behavior of a quantum system just on the basis of the observation. Now, what they fail to mention is that when they say observer, they're talking about an instrument which produces a perturbation within the system. They're not talking about a neutral observer. They're not talking about someone who's just looking and there's no interaction from that observer. They're talking about a device that produces a perturbation so the idea that it's just merely an observer and that the thing that's being observed, the nature of it, is determined by that observation, not only for the present moment, but for what it was in the past. This is pure insanity. People don't bother to think it through. And so people just go, wow, that's cool. And then people believe it. And now, if you're actually going to think carefully about any of these things, you're the crazy one. Welcome to my world. I would go so far as to say that I would recommend that no one thinks seriously. Because if you do, you will be so out of step with what's happening at the cutting edge of so-called human intellectual exploration. You know, the cutting edge is something which is, by definition, far from the center of mass. And we all know that things at the extremes are missing their counterbalance. They're off on a limb. They're out there on their own. And I'd say that that is a pretty good representation of the state of Western thought and of the West in general and of the United States in particular. We've gone out on a limb, you know, not only in terms of our philosophical hubris, but just in every way imaginable. The debt is astronomical. The games being played within finance it's like high-risk acrobatics. We attacked Iran. I mean, it's just the riskiest, most high-stakes, like idiotic edge play. And that's what we've sort of prided ourselves on, doing this outrageous extreme sport nonsense. And we have no interest in where the center of gravity is on anything. The middle path is something that is it's considered boring, perhaps irrelevant. And yet, it's only in the center of gravity, it's only in the middle of things that you can get a sense of both sides, that you can start to integrate the various dimensions of extension and to understand what that center is. Everything is happening within this present moment. It's so obvious. Right now, you are listening to something that was spoken in the present moment, but not at the same moment that you're hearing it. And when you're listening to this, that thing that happened where I'm speaking right now, it's over. It doesn't exist anymore. This is merely a trace of it. I'm having an experience internally right now, and I'm speaking from that experience. That experience can only happen now. There is no experience of the past. There is no experience of the future. There are only experiences of ideas of the past, of traces of the past, of marks, of records, which have to be interpreted, right? Signs and signals, if you like. And there's only theories and speculations and hopes and fears, dreams and nightmares about the future. Those are not happening. Those are just imaginings. Now, on a poetic level, you can say you can travel to the past by thinking about it. You can travel to the future by thinking about it. Sure. Sometimes you'll get kind of close to a sense of what it was or what it will be. But you're not going there. Not until you get there, with respect to the future. And there ain't no way you're going back. So my message to you is, once people start talking about time travel, once they start talking about retrocausality, I don't care how great any of the other ideas are. And the reason I'm saying all this is because I recently heard someone who I really enjoy. I'm not going to mention who they are. I really enjoy their thinking and the way that they lay out their ideas. But they recently started going on this retrocausality thing. As soon as you start hearing that, you can have confidence that this is someone who's not clear in their mind. At least that's what I believe. But maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe time is going in two directions at once. Now, you can make that kind of a case also on a different kind of poetic level. Because if you take time as being real within the domain of spirit, in other words, within the domain of the psyche. So we have physical reality and we have spiritual reality. And within spiritual reality, you have experience and thought. Within physical reality, you have transformations of matter. And so within spiritual reality, you could say there's a progression of time that is thermodynamic in nature. And that is the progression where things are developing and entropy is increasing. And you can say there's a counterbalance to that within the domain of the spirit, within the domain of the mind, within the domain of experience, where that gets turned around. And what you see is the progression of restoration of the root, back to the center of gravity, back to the middle path, back to the beginning of all things, back to God. And that is syntropy. That is attunement to the original energy. That is what the Taoists called returning to baby, returning to essence. And from this point of view, the movement of time is a state of mind. And that conception of the reality of time is something I am 100% willing to believe in. So we'll just finish off with my dog drinking some water. Because that's what's happening now.